Okay, I think this will be your last kind of set of lecture slides to look at and listen to on planning in other nations. Let's talk about Asia for a few minutes. Um, the planning scene is diverse. So when I kind of talked before in one of the other videos about planning in Western Europe, it's really hard for me to sit here and say, here's what planning is like in Asia because it's really diverse. There's a lot of differences. Okay, so think of all these different Asian nations, huge income differences between different nations in Asia. So, like for example, Japan's wealth is 20 times that of Bangladesh. So you've got big income differences. The range of difference is there's a whole range of differences in national growth rates. So like South Korea isn't really growing; they're kind of topped out, but India growing rapidly. So differences in how different nations are growing in terms of population, in terms of rural to urban migration. They're all in different places. Um, on that timeline. And then there's just a variety of different political regimes. So I can't say, okay, here's a capitalist place, here's a socialist place, here's a communist place. You have got just this variety of political regimes across Asia. Just want us to kind of think through this a little bit. So just some examples. So let's look at South Korea quickly. South Korea, really high standard of living. 48 million people own 20 million automobiles, and they live on 38,000 square miles. You can kind of talk about this reality. So there's this big emphasis on highway and public transit planning. New town planning is a major concern, as places like Seoul can contain almost half the population. So in South Korea, if Seoul is like has all the populations, this idea of how Britain did some new town planning. That's kind of something that's a concern. And they're also concerned with international economic competitiveness. If we talked before about America, about economic development planning, one of their concerns, one of their goals is this being competitive in the the global economy, becoming global cities. So just an example, like Incheon. In Incheon, they had a whole waterfront development master plan. We talked about these development plans in different areas. Well, okay, so this waterfront development to maybe attract people, maybe attract tourists, kind of economic growth. Well, the plan was done by a New York architect and planning firm. So it's very much kind of this New York style, and it's to help the city compete in international trade and finance. So that's just kind of another planning goal for you guys to think about. So Japan, emphasis on public transportation and infrastructure development. There's an interest in UGBs, or urban growth boundaries. They want to channel urban growth to preserve spaces between places, or more like direct urban growth, so that yeah, there's spaces between places. I think you guys know what that means. And then presently, there's a focus on rebuilding after the 2011 tsunami. So again, some of these themes of rebuilding urban places after disaster. Um, so Asia, let's think about maybe less prosperous cities or areas of Asia. So you have a rural to urban migration going on. So this kind of manifests in large squatter settlements. So because of that, these squatter settlements, these kind of informal, um, illegal, maybe even housing settlements. So providing even minimal housing is a tremendous problem. Um, so part of what they've done in planning is this the need is to provide resources to squatter settlements, or just provide minimal housing. See, this is a lot different than we want to redevelop these gorgeous waterfronts so that we compete in an international economy and accommodate for wealth and growth. This is really different. So planners here are going to be concerned with just these basic, what you would think about as basic human rights kind of needs, where planners are going to be concerned about providing clean water in order to prevent disease. There's going to be a focus on problems of poverty, these really serious problems, and so their goals and their problems that planners need to tackle are more of this: clean water, prevent disease, problems of poverty. So their goals are not so much going to be, how do we make these beautiful green spaces? How do we promote walkability? Some of these new urbanism kind of things we talked about in class. This is a really different set of concerns. And I just wanted you to kind of take a minute and think about that. How planning concerns are going to be influenced by a different way of life. Okay, jumping to just another example, Shanghai. In Shanghai, you have got more residential and commercial high-rise construction going on than anywhere in the world. So in a place like Shanghai, planners are preoccupied with questions of urban design, public transportation, dealing with increased car ownership. And so I mean, you can kind of see how those things are really different. Different areas, different cities are going to have really different planning goals based on what's going on. So can we pinpoint an Asian style of planning? You know, I'm singling out Asia in this example, but you could ask the same question: can we pinpoint an African style? So here's the issue that I want you guys to think about. The flow of planning ideas has largely been from the West to Asia. So what this means is very Eurocentric, very Euro-American styles being imposed upon other countries. So you can see these British town planning traditions everywhere, all around the globe. Some of these early town planning we talked about, with the city that's laid out in a grid, these kind of British town planning traditions, you see these all over the world. Another issue, Asian planners, they are trained in America. They are trained in Europe. So it's American and European schools of planning that are training Asian planners. And so that's going to influence the style. So, and also kind of what we talked about, the example where American and European architectural firms provide consulting services to clients in Asia. So in class we can talk about kind of all the implications of this. It's really hard to, I mean, particularly us, we're sitting in a university in the United States, we are English speaking. So much of planning as a profession, urban planning, architecture, design, has been influenced by Europe and by America as the way. And so we don't have as many resources to even start to conceptualize what planning in other nations could really look like in a more equitable way. And so let's talk more about that in class, and I'll have a couple assignments for you guys to explore that in more detail.